Welcome to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. What do we do here? We give you news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out each. Then what we do is we make commentary. That is not the news. That is just my opinion, just as valuable as yours. And that leads us to debate. That's exactly right. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. That is what we do. How do you debate? Well, there are a couple of different ways you can do it. You can either join us on the telephone, 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172, or you can join us on this chat room. By the way, Curtis King is the first through. He wins the chat room derby today on the Wells Report. Thanks very much for joining us, Curtis. By the way, you may have noticed that we got kind of a late start. I was peacefully minding my own business this morning. We had a power surge. In other words, things turned off for a second, turned back on, which means I have to reset all of this equipment. And I did so before I went on the air, and then all of a sudden, things stopped working. So I don't know exactly what that was all about. And so had to put all that stuff back together again. But that's why we got a late start this morning. And not this morning, but this afternoon. And I'm so sorry that happened. But I did my due diligence. I did what I was supposed to do. I did the right thing. Hey, J. Randall Dupay. By the way, thanks very much for you taking part in helping support this broadcast financially. More about that coming up in just a couple of seconds. Starting to get people to take this program seriously enough to put their money where my mouth is. And I can't tell you how nice that is and how much that means to me. But since we got a late start here, we got a break coming up because radio stations, and I don't know what they're going to do for the first segment. Yikes. But anyway, radio stations use this broadcast to fill in and et cetera, et cetera. So if you are a radio station planning on using this broadcast, do me a favor, grab the second and third hour because this hour is kind of screwed up from a format standpoint, okay? Let's see. Right. Okay. The Balloon Festival, the 50th year anniversary Balloon Festival is going on in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and that's why Curtis King is there. Found out that somebody stole a truck and trailer out here with one of the hot air balloons in it. They found the trailer in Santa Fe, but no sign of the truck. Based on my experience, you may want to go south of the border for that, by the way, in case you're wondering. By the way, coming up on this broadcast, we're going to spend a little bit of time. By the way, let me see if this works. Oh, good. Yeah, that's working. I still got to work on the shots. Shots are still kind of screwed up because these are electronic cameras and they reset to 0, so I have to fix the shots. So I'll be doing that at the bottom of the hour here in about 49 seconds. So what I've got here is I'm going to take a quick break, let everything get all put back together again in the right spots. And then what we'll do is we'll continue with the broadcast. By the way, something that we need to talk about. A federal judge has temporarily blocked parts of the New York gun law. Remember how Kathy Hochul, who is the governor of New York, was talking about how she was going to double down after that ridiculous Supreme Court decision regarding the New York gun law? They just threw it out. So she came up with another gun law. Well, a federal judge has temporarily thrown that one out. And we'll have more details on that coming up in just a couple of seconds. Look, this is important jurisprudence here. What the Supreme Court is doing and what states are doing with what the Supreme Court is doing, specifically New York, is essentially defying the highest court in the land. And I keep telling you about these people that are willing to set aside the Constitution of the United States for the sake of their politics. And now they're doing it with the people who interpret the Constitution of the United States for the sake of their politics. This is just not going to work. And why is this happening? Well, it's happening because in this case, we didn't elect the wrong person. In this case, she sort of ascended to the governorship of New York because she was the lieutenant governor at the time and probably should have stayed there. I'm talking about Kathy Hochul. Anyway, she gets smacked around by a federal judge in New York, in Syracuse to be specific. And we'll tell you that story coming up in just a couple of seconds. Sorry about coming back only in time for a break, but we will be back in just about 5 minutes. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. We give you the news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary. That is not the news. That is my opinion. We debate the opinion. We debate the analysis. We debate the news. And you can do that on the chat room, the chat room on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. You can also do the telephone number, as I said. By the way, Alicia Delosier asks me how I'm doing. I'm doing fine. I'm all excited. After today's broadcast, I get to go play a professional drum gig. The first one in about 35 years. Yeah, my first professional drum gig in about 35 years, and I'm really excited about it. I took some time off and have been trying to rebuild my chops, as they say in the music biz. And that is a very serious and difficult undertaking. It just is. So had a little bit of a technical difficulty today. Thank you very much for asking, by the way, Ms. Alicia. Anyway, had a technical difficulty today, so sorry about that. We're going to pick up where we left off, which is at the beginning of the broadcast. A federal judge, this according to Fox News, a federal judge temporarily blocked parts of New York State's new gun law in order to allow the gun owners of America to pursue a lawsuit challenging the legislation. Chief Judge Glenn Suddaby of the Northern District of New York in Syracuse ruled that the gun owners of America have a legitimate case for a lawsuit against the new state law complicating the process to obtain a gun license. The decision will not go into effect for 3 days. This will allow the New York government to appeal Suddaby's ruling to a higher court. The proposed law sets out strict standards for concealed carry permits. The law requires that an applicant for a permit complete 16 hours of classroom training, 2 hours of live fire exercises, and provide a list of social media accounts over the last 3 years as part of a character and conduct review. Renewal or recertification of permits is required every 3 years. Under the law, Times Square, along with parks, churches, and theaters are some of the sensitive places where weapons would be off limits. Advocates note that the list of prohibited spaces will make it difficult for people with legal permits to move around in public, and those entering private businesses carrying weapons could only do so with permission. Last month, Suddaby dismissed a previous lawsuit from the GOA on the grounds the group had no standing to file the lawsuit. This time, Suddaby determined large portions of the law are unconstitutional, leaving the door open for what we're discussing here. Now, by the way, there's more information. That was the latest version of the story. So let me give you an idea of what he actually blocked here. Let's see, 16 hours, blah, 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 under the law. I think that's the same one. Yeah. Large portions of the law are unconstitutional. For example, the social media accounts, that's none of the business of the state of New York. Okay. Now there are, there are other articles on this. Let me give you this one. This one is from Syracuse.com. Okay, Syracuse.com. Essentially, this is local news. A federal judge in Syracuse blocked enforcement of several parts of New York's broad new gun law. Today, U.S. District Judge Glenn Suddaby ruled that several provisions of the state's new gun law are unconstitutional and cannot be enforced. He delayed the implementation of his decision for 3 business days to allow the state to seek an appeals court ruling. Suddaby's temporary restraining order is in effect until at least October 20th, that motion briefing, at least an October 20th motion briefing in his courtroom. Suddaby blocked provisions of the law that outline new requirements for background checks for gun permits, including the disclosure of all of an applicant's social media accounts. That's none of the state's business. He also blocked bans on guns in some public and private properties. His decision today granted a temporary restraining order against 6 provisions listed in the law. He took issue with the state's new background check requirements. 4 of the 6 provisions struck down relate to tough requirements for an application or renewal of a license for concealed carry. He rejected the provision that an applicant must have evidence to demonstrate they have good moral character. An attempt by the state to block guns from people with bad intent. That's thought crime. Sotheby reversed the burden of proof, saying it's up to the licensing agency to prove the applicant does not have good moral character. That's essentially what it is. That's a background check, okay? The moral character thing is kind of a canard. Sotheby also ruled the state cannot require applicants to have an in-person meeting with a licensing officer, disclose the names and contact information of all adults residing in their homes, or provide a list of all current and former social media accounts for the past 3 years. Sotheby also reduced the state's broad bans on guns to in public and private places. He ruled that presumptive gun bans can only be enforced in government administrative buildings, polling places, public areas restricted to general access for special events through permits, or any public or private educational facility. The wording in his decision clarifies that while guns will remain banned from any place of worship or religious observations, individuals who are tasked with security are permitted to carry firearms. Good. New York's law also required gun owners to have explicit permission to carry guns on private property. Sotheby has previously revealed he disagreed with the constitutionality of that presumptive ban. Now, here in Texas, we have something called a 30-06 law, which is where the owner of a business can prohibit people carrying concealed in his business, in his place of business. Okay, and you got to put your weapon away. That's just the way that works. So I'm not exactly sure whether that's going to withstand the approval process or the appeal process, but we'll see. He said this: the state of New York is now making a decision for private property owners that they are perfectly able to make for themselves. See what I mean? In other words, the private property owner can decide whether they want people with concealed weapons to enter their property. If you do show up in Texas that posts plainly a 30-06 law, that's 30.06 of the Texas Penal Code. If you show up with a weapon, then you are violating criminal trespass laws. Okay, so that's what they're talking about there. Let's see what else. The provision was all but completely rejected by his decision. Sotheby ruled guns should be presumed to be permitted in public spaces unless an explicit ban is issued by that private property owner. The owner of a house or business can ban guns. The only exception to the ruling is privately owned fenced-in farmland or fenced-in hunting ground. Attorney General Letitia James announced today she would be appealing the decision. She did not disclose when the appeal would be filed in her official statement. While the decision preserves portions of the law, we believe the entire law must be preserved as enacted, said James. Governor Kathy Hochul directly the Sotheby in her statement. I don't know what that's. Let's see. Hold on just a second. Let me go back. Yeah, this is a typo. While this decision, here's what she said. She made a statement about Judge Sotheby. While this decision leaves aspects of the law in place, this is Governor Hochul now, it is deeply disappointing the judge wants to limit my ability to keep New Yorkers safe and prevent more senseless gun violence. I'm sorry, Governor, you have done nothing to prevent senseless gun violence. Nothing. All you've done is make senseless gun violence possible. Now, that's just my opinion. Note that I differentiate between news and opinion. Eric Pratt, he is the senior vice president of Gun Owners of America, thanked Sotheby in his statement following the decision. We are grateful to Judge Sotheby for his quick action to restore the right of the people to keep and bear arms. Sotheby has previously ruled that parts of the law were unconstitutional, but he couldn't take action because the lawsuit filed against the law was flawed. The lawsuit was filed by 7 New York men. The primary plaintiff is Ivan Antoniuk. There was a Schenectady man who wished to carry his weapon for protection virtually everywhere. Antoniuk said that the law's restriction of guns on private property without explicit permission impeded his Second Amendment right. He's going to lose that one, by the way. This is the second suit filed by the same man. Sotheby previously ruled in the first lawsuit filed by Antoniuk that the plaintiff had no grounds to sue because the law had not yet gone into effect. The sweeping law was hastily passed following the U.S. Supreme Court decision to overturn a provision of New York's law requiring a license to carry concealed weapons in public places. Sotheby relied heavily on that case in his decision, which makes sense. In the case of New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, the Supreme Court ruled that a provision in the New York previous law requiring applicants for an unrestricted concealed carry license to demonstrate a special need for self-defense prevented law-abiding citizens from exercising their Second Amendment right to bear arms in public for self-defense. The law was overturned by the Supreme Court. The law overturned by the Supreme Court was established in 1913 as an amendment to the Sullivan Law following the establishment of a similar law in Massachusetts, according to a briefing from the New York State Attorney General's office. In a dissenting opinion, Justice Stephen Breyer stated that the court's decision severely burdened the state's ability to curb gun violence. It's not succeeding. Their idea to curb gun violence is not working. The new law, recognized as the strictest in the nation, went into effect September 1st. The law's passage made New York the first state to criminalize the carrying of handguns on all private property without explicit permission. The law also requires new training requirements and the disclosure of social media accounts for new applicants. As we've seen, that was set aside by Judge Sotheby. So the thing about it is this. Governor Kathy Hochul was extremely snippy about her response to the original Supreme Court decision. And she said she just plain said that we were not going to back down. Well, what you're doing is unconstitutional. The new law is unconstitutional. It will be struck down. I mean, the Supreme Court made this clear. The licensing agency has to prove that you are someone who should not have a weapon. And if they do a background check and you come up clean, they can't prove that. Consequently, if they can't prove it, they shall issue a concealed weapons permit. And the rest of this training and all this gobbledygooky garbage is unnecessary. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're carrying a weapon, and I don't care where you're carrying a weapon, whether it's New York or Timbuktu, you had better know everything there is to know about that weapon and how to use it and when and why. You have to make the right decision at the right time, because in a lot of ways, a concealed carry permit, which I've carried for over 20 years, is a get into jail free card. You see, because you've done all this training. So if you make a mistake, they're going to hang you with it. Fortunately, people like me don't make those mistakes very often. The number of mistakes made by concealed weapons holders is infinitesimal. I mean, like 0.0 something percent. And the reason is because we're law-abiding citizens. We've always been law-abiding citizens. We will always be law-abiding citizens. And the default setting by any government at any level that you are simply a criminal in waiting is un-American, anti-constitutional, and should, by right, ought to be set aside by the nearest judge, which is what's happening here. Look, the United States is an amazing country. It is an amazing country because we have amazing rights that are heretofore not necessarily always protected. And they must be always protected. Okay? By the way, Alicia points out that Kyle Rittenhouse did not get the same right. Well, yes, he did. It took a while, though. He was the kid that took the AR-15 into, I believe it was Wisconsin, and got into an altercation there, did his absolute dead level best to get away from the people that were creating the mess, and defended himself with his weapon. And, I mean, showed ample times that he was taking care of his duty to retreat, which he did. And they found him innocent, and he's very likely going to make an awful lot of money from an awful lot of news agencies that did not report the story, but reported how just terribly awful Kyle Rittenhouse was. So there you go. And by the way, the people that provided the video made it possible for Kyle Rittenhouse to be walking around free, which is a good thing. You are listening to The Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is 817-379-2172. So we've been talking a little bit about We've been talking a little bit about how a lot of us believe the country is on the wrong track. There is new polling information about that very subject. We're going to be talking about that coming up in just a couple of seconds here on the Wells Report. Our telephone number, 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Once again, thanks very much for being a part of our radio broadcast. If you have something to say, give us a call on the phone, or you can go to the chat room, which is hopping right this very second. Alicia Delosier is joining us, along with a lot of other friends of mine. Curtis King and J. Randall Dupape, and 13, or let's see, that would be 3, and 11 of their closest friends. All part of the chat room today, so you be too, won't you? Back with more in a moment. This is the Wells Report. Thanks for being here. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. This is amazing. I've got to get to this, but first let me explain something to you. President Biden's approval rating continues to struggle among Republicans and independents, and 69% of Americans express the opinion the U.S. is on the wrong track. This according to a Marist poll released today. President Biden's approval rating has been on a steady increase over the last 3 months, with 44% of Americans say they approve of the job he's doing. The president's approval rating jumped 3 points from September. Disapproval among American voters shrank by 5 points, dropping to 49% from 54% last month. 24% of poll takers strongly approve of how President Biden is doing. 40% strongly disapprove. He's underwater there. President Biden's highest approval rating was in March, 47% of the country giving a stamp of approval for how he's been doing. However, while the president has gained back support among Democrats, Americans overall still believe the nation is moving in the wrong direction. While a majority of Democrats, 52%, think the nation is moving in the right way, 91% of Republicans say no. 71% of independents say the country is off track. The latest poll comes as elected officials prepare for the midterms next month, 33 days from now. 33 days from now. According to Marist findings documents, Democrats hold a 3-point average over Republican candidates. 3 in 4 Americans said they're confident or very confident their state and local governments will run a fair and accurate election. I certainly hope so. I absolutely hope so. And so yesterday I was on the broadcast, this one, and I said that Kamala Harris, our vice president, looks more and more like the lead character in the HBO series Veep. Okay? Veep. Well, apparently The Daily Show was listening yesterday and came up with this comparison. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you this thing. And once again, this is from The Daily Show. So hope you enjoy it. Oh, wait, hold on. Just a minute. Let's start over because I didn't have the sound up. And sound is apparently important on this medium. So here we go.
My fellow Americans,
Words have many meanings, and sometimes instead of conveying our meaning, they can suggest other meanings.
When we talk about the children of the community, they are the children of the community.
well, we are the United States of America because we are united. And we are states.
Talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time.
Whatever we have in store cannot be known. The past was once the future. The future is, I should say, unknown.
We got to take this stuff seriously as you are, because you have been forced to have to take it seriously.
Obesity is a serious disease, and it needs to be taken seriously.
You need to get to go and need to be able to get where you need to go to do the work and get home.
I hope that clarifies the issue, and this can be the last word on those words.
Certain issues are just settled.
Clearly, we're not.
No, that's right. And that's why I do believe that we are living, sadly, in real unsettled times.
Oh, my. I'm sorry. I had to share that with you because that was so funny. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that just incredible? By the way, you can find that under The Daily Show at The Daily Show on Twitter. Oh, and of course, our resident Democrat, Langston, says D-. Man, Langston, dude, seriously, man, that's funny. I don't care who you are. That's funny. Take the politics out of it. You've got to just take politics out of this stuff because this is funny stuff. I'm sorry, this is just funny. And like I said it yesterday. Am I a fortune teller or what? And obviously, The Daily Show listens to this broadcast. I mean, think about that for just a couple of seconds. Oops. let me get the other camera here. Yeah, okay. So I'm not as good at television as they are. So what? But The Daily Show listens to this broadcast. I love that. I think that's fantastic. You know, the host, what is that guy's name? Trevor, what's his name? Who's the Daily Show? Who's the Daily Show with Trevor Noah? You know, Trevor Noah is leaving the show. Should I send him a resume? What do you think? I could be the host of The Daily Show. No, I didn't think so either. Yeah. Be nice, though. Be kind of fun. I mean, I would, you see, because I actually genuinely, thank you, Ellen. I genuinely believe that you can have fun with the foibles of people running the nation without being a jerk. You know, you can have fun without being a jerk. You do not have to be a snot bag. That's somebody who likes to be snotty. You don't have to be a snot bag in order to have some fun with our elected leaders. Come on. Everybody needs to lighten up, don't you think? This is the Wells Report. Coming up in just a couple of seconds, we are going to spend a little bit of time talking about a new way, a novel way to throw the race card. There's a novel way to throw the race card, and New York governor, make that New York mayor, Eric Adams, has done it. Back with more about that in just a moment. Hey, listen, folks, thanks very much for being here, and we've got another hour in just a sec. Hi there. This is the Wells Report, hour number 2. That's right, the Wells Report. What do we do on this broadcast? I'm so glad you asked that question. Here is the answer. We provide honest news. We report the news of the day honestly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point that out. I make commentary. That is not the news. The news is the facts, or are the facts. The news is the facts. That's actually correct. Anyway, the news is the facts. And then what I say about them, that's not news. That's just commentary. That's opinion. And by the way, a lot of people who do this job want their opinion to be the news. It is not. And so I know what the difference is here on this broadcast, and maybe that's why you're here. And then you can take part in the debate, which is the whole reason, one of the reasons why we're on the air. First of all, to give you real information, then to debate what it means. Because we've got to make better decisions with our country, because obviously the people we keep sending to Washington, D.C. to make decisions for us in this representative democracy or a republic are blowing it badly. And we need to start electing better people. And I frankly believe we should start electing ourselves. Politicians elect themselves. Why don't we follow suit and start electing ourselves? Because that's what the founding fathers of this nation intended. They intended that we contribute our time to this nation and then go back and live under the laws that we got passed. I don't believe, and every time we turn around, we keep finding out that politicians have exempted themselves from the laws they pass, which, as you know, is a problem. So this is the Wells Report, and that's what this is for, and we've got a reason coming up to keep listening to this broadcast, so let me give you some more information about it. So here we go. Race card. It is part and parcel of American politics. If you're saying something that your political opponent doesn't like, then you're branded as a racist. Why? Because it works. That's why. It works, and it's been used so much. No weapon, by the way, retains its sharpness with overuse. In other words, this used to be a much bigger deal, but since essentially people of the left have called anybody who voted for Donald Trump, for example, a seething racist, then it's sort of lost its zip because everybody's a racist that disagrees. Let me give you another example of the overuse of this particular political weapon. New York City Mayor Eric Adams, when pressed on plans to build an emergency shelter for asylum seekers in the sanctuary city he is the mayor of, suggested in an on-air interview yesterday that Republican Texas Governor Greg Abbott is trying to undermine cities with black mayors by busing migrants to the Big Apple, Washington, D.C., and Chicago. It's an interview on Inside City Hall with Errol Lewis. Adams said that he refuses to, quote, pit everyday New Yorkers against migrants, and I'm not going to take away resources that we really have to allocate for everyday New Yorkers. He went on to say this, quote, this is a national problem. It needs a national response. And that's why we call on Washington to respond to this on a national level. This differs from the everyday shelter system. This is a migrant crisis. We must focus on that. Everyone comes to this city. We're going to ensure that we fulfill our obligation of getting them housing. But this is a migrant humanitarian crisis that we are facing. I guess it's interesting because ultimately, while it's certainly a crisis and definitely a problem. If they're going to keep sending people here from Texas by the thousands week after week, at some point it will become the norm, right? Well, yeah. And Adams, that by the way was, I think, from the moderator. Okay, yeah, that was Mr. Lewis who said that. And then the mayor said yes. And that was the fear we had in the beginning when it first started with Governor Abbott. We knew that unfortunately some people were going to use this as a playbook to send buses to both New York, Washington, and to Chicago. Keep in mind, these are 3 cities where we have black mayors. This is undermining our economy and undermining our attempt to recover in our cities. We've already been dealing with crises from COVID to monkeypox to crime to housing. And I think it's something that we need to be very clear on. These 3 cities were targeted, and I have a conversation this afternoon with the mayors of the other 2 cities. The host asked directly, You think these cities are being targeted, including New York, because they have black mayors? Careful, Mr. Mayor. Quote, well, I don't know if it's black mayors or if it's just going to northern cities, but something is wrong. Nice backup. Yeah, he backs away from that statement a little bit. I mean, we have thousands of cities in the country. Why are we specifically targeting Washington, Chicago, and New York? There's something wrong with that, and I believe there needs to be a national response to give the assistance to these three important cities in our country. By the way, Fox News reached out to Abbott's office for comment. Nothing so far. As of September 30th, Texas has bused 8,100 migrants to D.C. since April, 2,900 migrants to New York City, and more than 870 migrants to Chicago since August 31st. Okay, so here's the situation. Mr. Mayor Eric Adams is absolutely correct when he says this is a national problem and it needs a national response. And the point of the matter is that President Biden needs to get to work with Republicans and Democrats and come up with a plan to handle the border, which must start with functioning security for that border, period. Finish the fencing, and come up with a real immigration system. Mr. President, I've got one ready to go. It's a great plan. It will work. If you put it in play, you have a much better chance to get reelected in 2024. By the way, I offered it to President Trump and his crew when he was running for election in 2020. They told me to buzz off. It's the best plan I've ever heard. Now, that's not just me being self-serving, but I sat back and I looked at all the problems that have to be solved in our immigration system, and I came up with a way of doing it. I've bored the people who've listened to this broadcast over and over and over again. Yeah. And so once again, Alicia points out, well, this is what the president has been doing. Was the president, when he sent those immigrants to cities with black mayors, was he also playing the race card? Is that what was going on, Mr. Adams? The answer is no. There is no racial anything in this. This is a problem that we have. It's an onslaught down here in Texas and in New Mexico, Arizona, and California. It's affecting the entire nation. It is a national problem. Mayor Eric Adams of New York is completely correct in that, but he needs to stop hassling Greg Abbott. There's another point in this that has to be made. These mayors, and I don't care what color they are, these mayors and governors have all profited politically and perhaps otherwise by flouting American law and saying we are a sanctuary city, we're a sanctuary county, we're a sanctuary state. They profited politically by that, and perhaps otherwise too. And so this is where the piper comes calling for his payment. That's what we're dealing with here. This is not a racial issue. This is an immigration issue. This is an immigration issue that was created by politicians and exacerbated by President Biden. And yes, the president needs to intervene. And yes, the Republicans need to come up with a plan that works. And yes, the Democrats need to come up with a plan that works. And they need to quit screwing around with all the rest of this stuff and stop talking about, well, it's too close to the national election for us to do anything about it. Baloney. Do it right now. I think that everybody that's on record, every state, every county, every city that's on record as being a sanctuary city should be receiving immigrants from this border every single day. Every single day. And so does the president, by the way. The president agrees with me because that's what he's been doing. I was in Laredo, Texas. I saw there was one of these camps that was right next to where I was assigned. Okay. And by the way, whenever I speak of my military duty in the state of Texas, I am speaking as an individual. I do not speak for the Texas Military Department or the Texas State Guard. Okay. I'm speaking as a complete individual here. Anything I say, I'm solely responsible for the content that I share, and it's my opinion only. But I was stationed down there in Laredo, and there was an intake camp that was less than a mile up the road. We saw the buses going directly to Laredo Airport, and that's where they flew out of. It's one of the places they flew out of. And yes, it did occur in the middle of the night. And there is no place in the United States, except perhaps Alaska, certainly Hawaii. There are no places in the United States where you can't get there in a night flight. So in other words, they did land before the sun came up. And so in the dead of night, these people were being flown around by the President of the United States, the administration. And I pointed out that made President Biden the most successful, the most prolific human smuggler doing business in the United States, because that's what it is, human smuggling. Now, the political bias turned that into human trafficking. Human trafficking is about the sex trade. It doesn't have anything to do with what the president is doing unless the president is involved in the sex trade, and I really doubt that. All I can say is that it's human smuggling, and that's serious enough. Human smuggling is a crime against humanity. But all these big city mayors, all these guys, I don't care what color your skin is. All I care about is whether or not you have made political hay by saying that you are going to be the mayor of or are the mayor of a sanctuary city. This is the price you pay for the political support you got because of that statement. All Greg Abbott is doing is holding you accountable. That's all. That is absolutely it. And it has nothing to do with race. And you should be ashamed of yourself, Mayor. To throw that on the table. I know that further along in the interview, he backed off, which was very, very smart because he knows that's stupid. But the host of that broadcast gave him an opportunity to really sink himself, and fortunately, Eric Adams is smarter than that. He backed up. Good. As a matter of fact, you know what? I'm going to go a step further with this. Anybody who happens to be a county commissioner or a city mayor or a governor of a state that talks about how they are a sanctuary jurisdiction, you know what you should be doing? You should be requesting immigrants to be sent to your city, county, and state. You shouldn't be waiting for Greg Abbott to just pick you out of a hat and send immigrants to your state or your city or your county. You should be requesting these people. That would be the American thing to do. But you know what? I haven't seen a single request. I'm not saying that hasn't happened, but I have not seen a single request from any of these sanctuary jurisdictions asking for immigrants to be sent to them. Have you? If so, let me know. 817-379-2172. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Our chat room is going. You can find that on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. So whatever happened to that $1.9 trillion that got dumped on the United States that caused 8% plus inflation? COVID-19 relief funds from President Biden's American Rescue Plan went to a transgender dance studio in San Francisco that teaches exercises to people with color who are, quote, sick of white people's bullsh. They use the whole word, white people's BS, and founding father F-boys. Yeah, they teach exercises, breathing exercises to people of color who are sick of white people's bullsh and founding father F-boys. And so they are decidedly bigoted and anti-American, aren't they? The ARP Act, the American Rescue Plan Act, which Democrats passed in March of 2021 without Republican support, was billed by the Democrat Party as an economic necessity for getting the country through the COVID-19 pandemic. Economists on both sides of the aisle have blamed the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan for overheating the economy, contributing to inflation. The National Endowment of the Arts, this, by the way, according to Fox News, received $135 million in ARP funds, awarded grants to hundreds of organizations to help with recovery and reopening. According to NEA records, $150,000 of American Rescue Plan grants was awarded to, quote, Fresh Meat Productions, also known as Sean Dorsey Dance, unquote. And that was to support personal expenses or personnel expenses in response to and recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. The support will help the organization maintain operations during recovery from the devastating economic and health effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, said the NEA grant. That's in the actual charter letter. The assistance will benefit the organization's constituency, such as arts workers, artists, and audiences. Fresh Meat Productions, according to the organizational website, was founded in 2002 by transgender choreographer Sean Dorsey. Quote, operating in a world that harms and excludes trans bodies and expression, Fresh Meat Productions lifts up trans and gender nonconforming artists as agents of change. This according to the mission page of Fresh Meat Productions. Quote, our award-winning programs support the creative expression, artistic development, and leadership of transgender, nonconforming, and queer communities, empower and connect audiences, foster dialogue and learning, promote the evolution of transgender arts and culture, build vibrant, resilient, connected communities. And, oh, by the way, teach their artists how to deal with white people bullsh and founding father F-boys. Okay. Fresh Meat Productions offers a free Stay Fresh at Home video series on its website, but states that all the artists have been paid for their amazing work. One of the videos, conducted by Jay Mays III, is a self-described black trans queer poet and the author of the book White Folks Be Trippin', includes a breathing exercise meant for brown, black, and indigenous folks who still have trouble dealing with white people's bullsh. Let's see if I can get you this picture. I'll show you this picture. This is the guy we're talking about. Yeah. No. So anyway, don't get me wrong. I'm not transphobic or anything like that, but I am obnoxious, entitled, rotten people, anti-American people phobic. I will say that. And I don't care what they dress like and what they talk about and who they snuggle up with. None of my business. Or what they do with their bodies. I'm just saying that, if you're getting a lot of money from the government, maybe you shouldn't crap on it so much. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for being here with us today. We give you the news, honestly. We honestly report the news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point that out. I make commentary, not the news. And we debate the aforementioned. It's what we do here, and thanks very much for being here with us. Telephone number 817-379-2172. If you'd like to debate anything, you are certainly welcome to do so. Whether you agree or disagree with any of my opinions, that's what makes the boat float. All right? We had a wonderful debate yesterday on this broadcast, and unfortunately, not a lot of people use the telephone to do it. But we still had a wonderful debate, and that's what this show's really all about. So by all means, take part in it. And by the way, if you find the show valuable, share it with your friends. Please subscribe. Our subscriptions are coming up very nicely. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. But share it with your friends. This is a grassroots movement. It's an independent news source. And we do the best we can with what we have, which ain't much. And if you'd like to add to what we ain't got, please, by all means, go to patreon.com/The Wells Report. patreon.com/The Wells Report. It's like $1. Okay? It's like $1. And I would really appreciate it if you would spend that $1. It's $1 a month, by the way, in case you're wondering. Yeah, despicable people. Okay, so Yvonne Field has pointed out something that we have to discuss, and this is brand new, and I don't know where this is going to go, but it is breaking news, and I figured what I probably ought to do is I probably ought to share it with you. Assuming that it's on the website at this point. Let me see here. Whoa. Okay. All right, here we go. This is 28 minutes old. All right, from Fox News. Federal investigators are weighing whether to charge Hunter Biden with various tax and foreign lobbying violations, false statements, and more, with a former official telling Fox News that an outcome to the case could be imminent. Fox News first reported in July the federal investigation into President Biden's son had reached a critical stage. Hunter Biden has been under federal investigation since 2018. The investigation is being conducted by Delaware U.S. Attorney David Weiss, a prosecutor appointed by former President Donald Trump. Fox News reported in July the federal grand jury looking into Hunter Biden's business dealings wrapped up its latest term in June and expired. A source at the time said no charges had been filed. A former senior Justice Department official told Fox News today the government does not need to have an active grand jury in order to file charges as part of a plea agreement. Oh, really? That official told Fox News today the renewed focus on the investigation, especially by the media, suggests a disposition or resolution that may be imminent in advance of a possible Republican takeover of the House of Representatives. Congressional Republicans have vowed to use subpoena power if they take the majority to investigate Hunter Biden. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to say, okay, look, we're going to file charges against Hunter Biden, and he's going to take a plea deal, and that's going to do away with the case before the Republicans can investigate it. That is a very sophisticated move, don't you think? Spokesperson for Weiss declined to comment on whether a new grand jury has been impaneled. He's not going to answer that anyway. Attorney General Merrick Garland and Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco have been briefed on the situation. Fox News reported in July Weiss and the Justice Department were looking into whether to charge Hunter Biden with various tax violations and more seriously, possible foreign lobbying violations. The source at the time said Hunter Biden could face possible false statement charges. There's a precedent in place there. That is a felony, and Michael Flynn took a plea deal on that to reduce it to a misdemeanor. The Washington Post today reported a possible false statement charge could be related to whether he lied during a gun purchase in 2018. He did. He said that he was not a regular drug user. It's on everybody's form. We all sign it. Of course, I'm not a regular drug user, so I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Okay, well, I have to admit, I do take aspirin. Fox News first reported last year the police had responded in 2018 to an incident in which a gun owned by Hunter Biden was thrown into a trash can by his wife, as it turns out. A source with knowledge of the October 23rd, 2018 report told Fox News that it was indicated that Hallie Biden, the widow of President Biden's late son, Beau, who was in a relationship with Hunter at the time, so it's not his wife, it's his girlfriend, threw the gun owned by Hunter in a dumpster behind a market near a school. A firearm transaction report reviewed by Fox News indicated that Hunter Biden purchased the weapon earlier that month. On a firearms transaction report issued by or reviewed by Fox News, Hunter Biden answered in the negative to a question that asked if he was an unlawful user of or addicted to marijuana or any depressant, stimulant, narcotic, drug, or any other controlled substance. Hunter Biden was discharged from the Navy after testing positive for cocaine. Hunter Biden's lawyer, Chris Clark, told Fox News that it is a federal felony for a federal agent to leak information about a grand jury investigation such as this one. Any agent you cite as a source in your article apparently has committed such a felony. We expect the Department of Justice will diligently investigate and prosecute such bad actors, unless, of course, they're James Comey. Anyway, we, as is proper and legally required, we believe the prosecutors in this case are diligently and thoroughly weighing not just evidence provided by agents, but also all the other witnesses in this case, including witnesses for the defense. That is the job of prosecutors. They should not be pressured, rushed, or criticized for doing their job. Well, that's not exactly the case either. If you've been watching Fox News in the evenings for the last few days, Tony Bobulinski has popped back up, talking about his part in Sinohawk Holdings, which was a company that Hunter Biden was a part of, and a bunch of other things that clearly paint a corrupt picture of influence peddling among members of the Biden family. And so I guess the thing to do is to, once again, bring these charges, get a plea deal done, and walk away. All right? So Clark, the defense attorney for Hunter Biden, as lead counsel for the defense, I have no contact whatsoever with federal investigative agents. Therefore, a rendition of this case from such an agent is inherently biased, one-sided, and accurate, said Clark, like the January 6th committee. And like both impeachments of Donald Trump. Yeah. Biased, one-sided, and inaccurate. It is regrettable that law enforcement agents appear to be violating the law to prejudice a case against a person who is a target simply because of his family name. Or it could be that he is the target of this law enforcement because he broke the flippin' law on video. A source told Fox News no final decision has been made on whether to charge Hunter Biden, stressed the investigation is ongoing. A spokesperson for the United States Attorney's Office in Delaware declined to comment. Fox News first reported in December of 2020, Hunter Biden was the subject of and a target of a grand jury investigation. This according to a well-placed government source. According to that source, a target means that there is a high probability that someone committed a crime, while a subject is someone you don't know for sure has committed a crime. The federal investigation into Hunter Biden was predicated in part by suspicious activity reports regarding suspicious foreign transactions. Another source familiar with the investigation told Fox News in December of 2020 that SARs, once again, suspicious activity reports, were regarding funds from China and other foreign nations. So I guess it wasn't Russian disinformation after all. A Treasury Department official who did not comment on the investigation spoke broadly about SARs, telling Fox News that that once again suspicious activity reports are regarding funds from China and so on and so forth. They're filed by financial institutions if there's something out of the ordinary about a particular transaction. The official told Fox News the mere filing of an SAR does not mean there's been a criminal act. That's true. Or violations of regulations, but instead flags that a transaction is out of the ordinary for the customer. The official noted, though, an SAR could be part of a money laundering or tax investigation. Hunter Biden, weeks after the 2020 presidential election, released a statement acknowledging federal investigation of his tax affairs. I take this matter very seriously, but I'm confident that a professional and objective review of these matters will demonstrate I handled my affairs legally and appropriately, including with the benefit of professional tax advisors. President Biden is repeatedly denying discussing Hunter's business ventures with him. That is something that Tony Bobulinski has refuted. And it looks like it's getting a little closer. Now, what about the big guy? What about the chairman? What about the president? Where does that go? Well, we'll see. And we will see, by the way. Let's see, what else? There was something else here that needed to be talked about. This is interesting. President Biden will pardon all prior federal offenses of simple marijuana possession. This, according to the White House today. The move applies to those convicted of simple possession of marijuana, including those in the District of Columbia. As I've said before, no one should be in jail for using or possessing marijuana. Sending people to jail for possessing marijuana has upended too many lives for conduct that is legal in many states. That's before you address the clear racial disparities around prosecution and conviction. Today, we begin to right those wrongs. In addition to the pardons, Biden urged governors to follow suit regarding state marijuana offenses and instructed Secretary of Health and Human Services Xavier Becerra and Attorney General Merrick Garland to begin reviewing how marijuana is classified under federal drug laws. The federal government currently classifies marijuana as a Schedule I substance, the same as heroin and LSD, and more serious than fentanyl, said Biden. It makes no sense. Okay, it may not make any sense, but what doesn't make sense is the president of the United States on his own whim trying to make legal marijuana. That is going to take congressional action. I'm sorry, that's just going to take congressional action, Mr. President. You don't get to just dictate terms of how life in America is going to exist. You have to use the legislature. That means the people of the United States have to be consulted. I am relatively sure that someone is immediately, well, I don't know that you can argue with a presidential pardon. And you certainly can't stop a president from using the bully pulpit to call on states and other municipalities to go ahead and pardon all those offenses. So there you go. Now, truth be told, all right, regarding marijuana, once again, the only problem that I have with marijuana possession and use is the fact that we don't know enough about it and how it actually affects a human being. We don't know how long it is a problem in someone's system. We know that you can get high enough so that you don't drive well. But how long does that last? How much of the active ingredient, which is called THC, how much needs to be in your system before you're considered under the influence? Again, we don't know. I find it also amazing that a country that went to war with the tobacco industry, that had warnings on every package of cigarettes that the Surgeon General had found that smoking was damaging to your health. None of that applies to marijuana, which, by the way, is a far more harsher form of inhaling smoke, of smoke that's inhaled. I, of course, don't really know that from my own experience. I just read about it. Anyway, that being said, none of this has been worked through. And it needs to be. Now, if we do all of that stuff, do I believe that marijuana ought to be legalized? It depends on the people. I like the state approach. I like the states making that decision. I don't think there needs to be an overarching federal anything. We are the United States of America, not the Federal Republic of America. And so I think the states ought to make up their own mind. And they're doing it. But me personally, should somebody be in jail for simple marijuana possession? Depends on the states. If you're in a state where that's a crime, well, you're going to jail if you get caught. Someone says, not a conspiracy person, but I don't think they're going to let Biden serve out his complete term. They want Kamala there for the pity vote. Is this Hunter Biden possible charges if they compromise Biden in a possible way to get him to step down? That's a possibility. Well, the thing about it is if any of this gets traction, and the possibility of it getting traction is at best 50-50, then President Biden could be impeached. What do you think about that? We'll talk about that next. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. We've been watching the story regarding the Biden family for a long, long time. And as you know, if you've listened to this broadcast for any length of time whatsoever, we do everything we possibly can to report the news without descending into trying to, shall we say, try cases in the media. We don't do that. I have reported the cogent information regarding the Biden family without pointing any fingers. And I will continue to do so. All right? And this whole thing brings up a lot of different things, and some of them are hypothetical. Like, for example, let's say that Hunter Biden takes a plea deal. What is he pleading guilty to? And there is a link in what has been reported in the media up to this point. There is a link between Hunter Biden and his father. Several, in fact. And they're disturbing. Once again, I haven't reported them because, there's no meat on those bones yet. But it looks like things are beginning to flesh out here. And what I'll do is I'll report it fairly. But someone on the chat room brought up, hey, wait a minute. What about the boss? What about the chairman? What about the big guy? How does this slop up against him? Well, once again, it depends on what we know. Now, the FBI has Hunter Biden's laptop. Do we have any idea, we the people, do we have any idea what's on that laptop? No. Does the FBI? Yes. Have they done anything with it? No. Something tells me they're not going to address anything they found on the video or the actual laptop itself in whatever it is this grand jury is coming up with, or whatever the plea bargain is going to be, which is not law enforcement. That is political protection of the chosen one. In this case, the chosen one being Hunter Biden. This is not going to solve the problem for the Biden family. It's just not. They're going to have to talk about this at some point. Tony Bobulinski used to be the CEO of Sinohawk Holdings. That was a company that Hunter Biden was a part of. He was very, very close to the Biden family. And he is talking. Why is he talking? Why is he blowing the whistle? Well, because they accused him of cooperating with, colluding, if you will, with Russians and Chinese regarding some of the things that happened while he was working with the Bidens. And he had to clear his name because at that point he was a Naval Reserve officer and had a security clearance. He had to do it. He had no choice. Now we're in a situation where this guy has testified, at least on Fox News, that he took all of his information, everything, all the emails, all the texts, all the metadata surrounding all of the emails and all of the texts, had a protracted interview with as many as 6 FBI agents in FBI headquarters in Washington. And they have done nothing with that information. And a lot of it is very damning. So what happens? So what happens if this splashes on the president? What are the alternatives? Well, they could impeach him. Now, the impeachment of Joe Biden is certainly not going to occur in a Democrat House. And if it occurred in a Republican House, it would be immediately described as a tit for tat. But the difference would be is so far, no one has been able to prove any assertions against Donald Trump. They have not been able to do that so far. They're not going to have any trouble proving the assertions against Hunter Biden. And if indeed the linkage exists that many people suggest that have looked at this information between Hunter Biden and the president, there will be easily proved high crimes and misdemeanors. And so, impeachment's possibility. There's also the possibility of trying to wait this out. Now, we know exactly we don't know exactly, but we think what's going to happen is that the Republican Party is going to take over the House of Representatives, and there is a very good probability that the Republican Party will take over the Senate. Are they going to start running all of this to earth? Probably not. Why? Well, because they're Republicans. And Republicans don't chase down Democrats. Democrats have no problem chasing down Republicans, but not the other way around. I don't know whether it's gutless, but I suspect it is. I also suspect that it's the ultimate hubris of the Republican Party saying we will rise above the piteous Democrat Party. We're not going to descend to their level. Well, if you don't, they're going to keep winning. And every time they win, it costs Americans another $1 trillion. So when will the Republican Party start actually playing the game of a honest-to-goodness party that's fit to lead a country? Your guess is as good as mine. This is the Wells Report. Stick around. Another hour is next. All right, dear friends. See you back in a sec, okay? North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Okay, what is the Wells Report? It is honestly reported news, analysis for bias and fact. We point out both. We make commentary. That's not the news. Commentary is my opinion. Just as valuable as yours, so share yours, and then we lead to debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. That's what we do here on the Wells Report. This is the third hour. We do 3 hours of Wells Report every single day. And we just got some breaking news that we've been talking about in the last hour. The federal government is weighing charges against Hunter Biden. The outcome of the case is imminent. It appears as though that since a federal grand jury that apparently was considering charges against Hunter Biden expired before charges were preferred, that what is indeed happening is the federal government is bringing charges anyway, expecting a plea bargain. And if there's a plea, that would, of course, short-circuit Republican plans to essentially investigate it through congressional means, etc. Now, that might work to, shall we say, inoculate Hunter Biden from political issues, but it's not going to inoculate the president of the United States. There are clear linkages between Hunter and his father. And those linkages revolve around a guy named Tony Bobulinski. And Tony Bobulinski is someone we had planned to talk about this hour of the Wells Report in the first place, but the breaking news sort of moved that up. But here was what we were going to talk about regarding Hunter Biden. Tony Bobulinski, who was he's a Navy veteran, and the former head of Sinohawk Holdings, described as a partnership between the CEFC, it's a Chinese energy conglomerate, and James and Hunter Biden, appeared on Fox News Channel's Tucker Carlson Tonight, Tuesday. It was an explosive interview. He says questions need to be asked of a former top FBI official who was involved in leading the investigation into the president's son, and then resigned from the agency while under scrutiny. This news, by the way, comes to us from the Washington Times. He described during the interview how he handed over allegedly incriminating information about the first son's business deals that involved the president's brother, James Biden, Chinese and other foreign interests, and reportedly, President Biden himself. A top official in Washington, in the Washington field office, that's the FBI field office, whom he said led the investigation, never bothered to follow up with him after Mr. Bobulinski met with FBI investigators, and the official resigned from the agency recently. After the Washington Times first reported in late August that Assistant Special Agent in Charge Timothy Thibault, who dodged interviewing Mr. Bobulinski about Hunter Biden, had resigned from the Bureau after accusations by Republicans of anti-Trump bias, a flood of FBI whistleblowers came forward to Congress, some describing the political bias at the FBI. It sounds like they're coming out of the woodwork. I think it's going to continue to accelerate, and apparently a variety of these whistleblowers claim that former Special Agent Tim Thibault was suppressing facts. I'm in Europe traveling. I called my lawyers and I asked, why haven't I been called in front of a grand jury? This makes no sense to me. They said they were going to follow up within a week and do follow-up interviews. Mr. Bobulinski said Mr. Thibault never met with him face-to-face, despite telling his lawyers he would follow up with him after Mr. Bobulinski spent 5 hours talking to 6 federal agents in Washington, D.C. about his business dealings just days before the 2020 presidential election. They were supposed to be working on a follow-up interviews, and Tim Thibault, in his last discussion with my legal counsel, was like, quote, "Listen, we know Tony's cooperating. We appreciate the information he's provided. We will follow up with you. We're definitely going to have them come in for a follow-up interview or spend some more time on this, and I haven't heard from him since." Unquote. The quote continued, "I was trying to respect the Department of Justice, but then you hear the person you're told was assigned to run point on thousands of documents text messages and calendars, and travel all that just walked out of FBI headquarters in DC. You got to start asking questions, unquote. I mean, Special Agent Thibault had been known to be incredibly politically biased for years before all of this. Is that why Tim Tebow finally was extricated from FBI headquarters? Because this is a guy who apparently interviewed the CEO of Sinohawk Holdings, which was a partnership between Mr. Bobulinski and Biden family members and possibly President Biden. They had this interview and didn't do anything with it. As a matter of fact, you didn't hear anything about it until Tuesday. Why? Because the FBI is playing politics, that's why. And when the national police starts playing politics, well, that's how these countries end up in the ash bin of history. The more I find out about this, the more I wonder whether or not the FBI has any kind of future at all. Whether the FBI is going to be abolished in favor of something called the National Federal Police. Whether the FBI becomes the NFP with totally brand new management. Every special agent in the FBI would be, and every employee would be welcome to apply for new jobs with the NPF, the NFP. I don't know that the FBI is going to be able to handle it. I don't know that the FBI is going to be able to recover from this. Because the national police becomes a political entity, and before you know it, you're living in a police state. Arguably, that's where we are. How do I know that? Well, we'll be talking about that in the second half of this hour. It has to do with who the DOJ charges and arrests or indicts, and who they don't charge and arrest or indict. That's coming up in the last half hour of this show, of this hour. Tony Bobulinski said during the interview on Fox News that he decrypted subtle word choices by Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg from his interview with UFC commentator and podcaster Joe Rogan. He also explained how it reportedly showed the FBI must have known how harmful his information on the Biden family was to Mr. Biden when he was running for the White House. Mr. Zuckerberg told Rogan earlier in the year that FBI officials cautioned Facebook executives about, quote, a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election, and to be on notice, there's about to be some kind of dump. That's similar to that, so just be vigilant. They were talking about the Hunter Biden story. That's just an opinion. And then Bobulinski pointed this out. He used the word dump, right? He said the FBI beat us to a dump that might be coming. They didn't say there might be a story. The FBI was well aware there was a laptop, well aware there were hundreds of thousands of emails and text messages and stuff like that, said Mr. Bobulinski, who would know since he gave the FBI all that information. And they did nothing with it. Because they wanted President Biden to be President Biden instead of Joe Biden, who retired as one of America's truly good vice presidents and lost the subsequent presidential election. They wanted him to be the president, and by golly, they got their wish. The New York Post published a couple of emails trying to make the American public aware of it, but Mr. Zuckerberg just casually said, oh yeah, the FBI came to us and warned us of a dump, noting the company throttled the story's reach across the platform. Throttled means censored. Censored. Also on Fox News, or moving to Fox News, Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin praised former Hunter Biden associate Tony Bobulinski for fulfilling his patriotic duty to come forward on FBI partisanship. That happened on the Brian Kilmeade show. It happened today. Johnson explained how the FBI ignored Bobulinski's allegations, and the complicit and corrupt media has ignored the evidence that he presented to Tucker Carlson. There is a video here from Fox News and the Brian Kilmeade Show. I like Brian, so I'm going to go ahead and play it. I hope you enjoy it. Let me bring this to you. Okay, so here we go.
Ready to start eating healthier?
Isn't that great?
Meet Kachava. Kachava is the
But first, a word from our sponsor. Actually, it's not our sponsor. It's Brian Kilmeade's sponsor. Do I sound jealous? I probably should.
Well, first of all, I appreciate the fact that Tony Bobulinski came forward. Obviously the complicit and corrupt media, like they covered up my report, like they covered up the laptop, also covered up Tony's testimony. But, he's a patriot, so he felt that his duty was to report to federal law enforcement. As much as I warned him against that, I already had my subpoenas out to Christopher Wray. I wasn't getting any response whatsoever. And I warned him, saying, Tony, you ought to come and sit down, transcribe the interview with our committee, and then we can make it public, okay, once we verify things. You talk to the FBI, it's going to go into a black hole, and that's exactly what happened. There are elements, particularly at the top of the FBI, that are thoroughly corrupt, highly partisan. We're seeing it in the way the Justice Department, or Department of Justice, is handling January 6ers versus the rioters in the summer. We have a multiple tier system of justice here. It's not being applied equally. And you've got partisans in these federal law enforcement agencies basically looking at anybody who voted for conservatives as potential domestic terrorists. This is dangerous for our country.
Yeah, it is dangerous for our country. And it's really horrible. And we cannot have a secret police that is biased. We simply can't have it. And so what are we going to do? Well, simple case of the matter is that what we're going to do is we're going to vote very carefully in the next election. That's what we're going to do. We're going to have to start paying more attention to all of this. And we're going to have to decide. This is just the simple case of it all. We're going to have to decide that our national media is corrupt and biased and is not actually providing us with fact. They are indeed providing us with propaganda. And this is a turning point in this nation's history. And that is all there is. This turning point in our nation's history has got to be dealt with. The FBI, as currently presented to us, is a danger to this nation based on the fact that it wants to play politics. And so is the Department of Justice. We're going to get to that and what they're up to coming up in just a little bit here on the Wells Report. My fellow citizens, I've talked about how there will come times when we will all know what to do. I dare say this is one of them. I'm beginning to think that the FBI not only will not survive this, but should not survive this. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. Hang on a second here. I'm interacting in the chat room, right? I do that, by the way. We debate, and so we're debating here. Let's see, because so many drivers don't use it. We're talking about marijuana, driving under the influence of marijuana. Okay, so there you go. Anyway, that's something we do. By the way, the debate part, we're serious about that. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. Take part. And by the way, if you find value in this broadcast, please do me a large favor. Please support it. Subscribe. Hit the like button. Send it to your friends. Tell them to find if they find value in this, then by all means send it to their friends. This is a grassroots independent news effort. And boy, do we need one. I dare say this one will do fine. Because I'm committed to doing an honest day's work. And my honest day's work is to bring you honest news. And that's what I do. This is the Wells Report. Something happened that was, once again, it's one of those things that what's more disturbing is the cover-up or the attempted cover-up or the shadowing or shading of certain things. Vice President Kamala Harris's vehicle was involved in a minor crash during a motorcade to the White House that was initially described as a mechanical failure. Now, there's a lot of journalism razzmatazz in this. I'll get to it in a minute because we do point out bias, okay? Harris, who was in the vehicle at the time, and Secret Service Director Kim Cheadle expressed concern the details of the accident had initially been mischaracterized. Secret Service spokesman said in a statement that the vehicle was part of a motorcade, had a minor overcorrection, and struck a curb. Harris was transferred to another vehicle, was unhurt, and everything was fine. Initial radio traffic indicated it was a mechanical failure that was communicated to an agency leadership personnel and who were supporting the motorcade movement, said the Secret Service spokesperson. After the protective movement was completed, the leadership was verbally updated with additional pertinent facts that the vehicle had struck a curb. The initial report the crash had mechanical failure caused concern. Cheadle was disturbed by the initial inaccuracy of the alert related to the vice president's delay, according to the Post. Nobody was injured. Harris's spokesperson, Kirsten Allen, said in a statement Harris sustained no injuries and appreciates the quick response by the United States Secret Service detail to get her to the White House safely. Now, what I think you need to know on this is that those cars have telemetry that is monitored in real time. And obviously when the vehicle, probably a Tahoe, hit the curb, it broke the front end a bit. That would have been immediately transferred via transponder to whoever's watching these particular vehicles because they're set up for that kind of telemetry. And it would have said a mechanical failure instead of somebody hitting a curb. That's where the briefing afterwards happened, and that's why the lag in the information between the briefing to Secret Service management and the information getting to the news created this little vacuum that was filled with, my God, they're not telling us the truth. That's not the case. The simple case of the matter is, like I said, the truck said, hey, I'm broken, because it was. You couldn't just change the tire. Apparently the suspension was damaged. They must have hit that curb pretty hard. Because I've hit curbs in my Tahoe very, very hard. And you know what? It didn't break it. Strangely enough, it did bend a little bit of the wheel. Cost me a tire, but that was about it. So all I can say is that beware of someone saying something in the media about, my God, they didn't want us to know that they hit a curb. No, that's not the case. It's just the way the information flows. And so now you know. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Coming up next, we're talking about political enforcement of the law. The DOJ might be guilty of it. You decide next. This is the Wells Report. Back in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for joining us. By the way, I was just doing some research, and I was on Wikipedia. And Wikipedia asked me for $2.75. Why? Well, because they operate an awful lot the way I operate, except I'm the sole editor. So I know when to tell the truth and why, and I do. But anyway, they're asking for money. They wanted $2.75 plus 35 cents to cover the transaction in PayPal. And so I'm only asking for $1. And if you go to patreon.com/The Wells Report, you can help this broadcast out, and I hope you do. Because we're essentially doing the same thing that Wikipedia is doing, except we're doing it with the news every day. We deal with the first draft of history. And so if you'd like to support what we do, please do. $1 is all you need. It's $1 a month. Okay? That would be great. And you can go to Patreon, patreon.com/The Wells Report. And you can make your decision, and I appreciate it. Thank you. And yes, I did give away $3.10 to Wikipedia because it's a good source. I don't care what anybody says. It's a good source of information. It's a good starting point, at least. So we've been talking about the FBI becoming America's secret police. What's the difference? Well, the FBI enforces federal law. The secret police enforces politics of the day. And the FBI is becoming the secret police. And as I said just a moment ago, I'm not exactly sure the FBI is going to survive all this. You know, it's quite possible the FBI might get abolished in favor of the National Police Force. The NPF would be a completely different organization, and I think it's about time we have one. Because the FBI has abandoned its mission and chosen political sides. That's the way it looks to me. That's my opinion. What's yours? 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172, if you don't mind. Now, what about the DOJ? What's the DOJ doing? Well, I'm going to report. You can make up your own mind. This, by the way, comes to us from Fox News. The Justice Department yesterday indicted 11 pro-life activists who investigators say blocked the access to a Tennessee abortion clinic during a protest, saying they violated the FACE Act. The activists, according to the indictment, organized an event blockading an abortion clinic near Nashville earlier this year. The DOJ alleges the group physically prevented both employees of the clinic and at least one would-be patient from entering the building in early March. The federal FACE Act prohibits demonstrators from blocking access to abortion clinics. The DOJ charged 7 of the protesters with, quote, conspiracy against rights secured by the FACE Act. This according to Chester Gallagher. They included Chester Gallagher, 73, Paul Vaughn, 55, Heather Idoni, 58, Calvin Zastro, 57, Caroline Davis, 24, Coleman Boyd, 51, and Dennis Green, 56. The indictments charged 4 others committing FACE Act violations: Eva Edel, 87, Eva Zastro, 24, James Zastro, 25, and Paul Place, 24 years of age. Those charged with conspiracy face up to 11 years in prison and a fine of up to $250,000. Those charged with FACE Act violations face 1 year in prison and a fine of up to $10,000. The DOJ alleges the protesters planned to blockade at the Carafem Health Center Clinic and block the entry's doors, or the clinic's entry doors, and prevented a patient and an employee from entering. The DOJ also states that Boyd live-streamed the event on social media and that footage showed members of the group attempting to engage a patient and her companion. As Boyd told his live stream audience, the patient was, quote, a mom coming to kill her baby. The charges come weeks after the FBI raided the home of a Catholic pro-life activist in Pennsylvania, alleging he had assaulted a man outside an abortion clinic earlier this year. Mark Houck, 48 years of age, woke to find more than a dozen FBI agents outside his family home with guns drawn September 23rd. This guy is a lay minister at his local Catholic church. That's why the guns were out, I guess. While President Biden's DOJ aggressively prosecuted pro-life activists, it has made no arrests in at least 17 incidents of vandalism and arson against pro-life clinics committed by the radical abortion group Jane's Revenge. Well, wait a minute. Who's Jane's Revenge? Jane's Revenge is a militant extremist abortion rights group that encourages and claims responsibility for acts of firebombing, vandalism, and arson in the United States, targeting crisis pregnancy centers, churches, and a congressional office. The attacks began in May 2022 after a leak in the ruling of Dobbs v. Jackson, which would overturn the 1973 Roe v. Wade ruling. So that's who Jane's Revenge is. And let's see. I just searched DOJ indictments against Jane's Revenge. 0 arrests in at least 17 Jane's Revenge attacks, this according to Fox News. Finance, Biden DOJ indicts 11 pro-life activists for blocking access. 28 congressmen agree. Justice Department fails to provide. Hang on a second here. 28 congressmen agree. Justice Department fails to provide justice for pro-life centers. Pregnancy center CEO says Jane's Revenge is the Democrat Party's new KKK. In other words, there have been no indictments against a group that has flat admitted arson and vandalism and firebombing. But they sure did chase down those 11 pro-life activists from stopping a couple of people to get into an abortion clinic in Tennessee. And they're also charging them with conspiracy. Well, what's Jane's Revenge doing? If that's not conspiracy, what is it? What's the DOJ doing? The answer is they're playing politics. That's what they're doing. This is something that the Republic cannot abide, nor tolerate, nor survive. And so once again, we go back to the original article that just 11 pro-life activists for blocking access have been indicted for blocking access to abortion clinics or an abortion clinic. And yet, at least Jane's Revenge has had no problem whatsoever in avoiding any of that while admitting it. Well, how about Ruth Sent Us? Well, Ruth Sent Us is a far-left group dedicating to launching protests against U.S. Supreme Court justices who vote to overturn Roe v. Wade, a decision that recognized a constitutional right to an abortion. It didn't establish it. It may have recognized it. This according to Influence Watch. The group is named as a reference to the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, despite its Facebook group stating, "We acknowledge that Ruth Bader Ginsburg was racist and also an iconic feminist." Okay. Anyway, Ruth Sent Us advocates for the arrest and prosecution of divisive, corrupt, and illegitimate Republicans, including Trump, his criminal family, politicians, and Supreme Court justices. Ruth Sent Us, by the way, doxed conservative Supreme Court justices' addresses in front of the entire world, and people showed up to protest. The DOJ did nothing. Well, once again, they sure got those 11 pro-life activists who blocked access to a Tennessee abortion clinic. My fellow citizens, as I said earlier, the FBI and the DOJ those two organizations are damaging our nation. They are actually arresting, indicting what will be political prisoners if they're found guilty. But there's something more insidious. I doubt very sincerely that any of these people are going to end up having to pay a single dollar in a fine or spend 5 minutes in a jail. What I suspect is going to happen is I suspect that if these people do actually go to trial, these pro-life activists. If it actually does go before a trial, it's going to be very quick. Either the judge is just going to dismiss all these charges out of hand, or a jury will dismiss all of these charges out of hand. So what's the worry? The worry is, in order to get to that point, everybody involved, everybody involved in the indictments are going to have to defend themselves with lawyers that will cost them about $100,000 a pop. So that's over $1 million in legal fees, because the DOJ indicted these people. Those cases aren't going anywhere, and the DOJ knows it. It's sort of like going after people at school board meetings. What they're doing is creating an entire new class of political criminals in the United States, political prisoners in the United States. That's what they're trying to establish. And in the meantime, they're going to ruin these people financially, just like they did with Mike Flynn, a guy who had to give up a house that his family had owned for generations in order to pay his legal bills. The DOJ knows all about this. Arguably, the guy that runs the DOJ, the Attorney General of the United States, was somebody that was actually going to end up being a Supreme Court justice at one point. Everything I heard about the guy was completely destroyed by his subsequent conduct as Attorney General. Merrick Garland is a politician with way too much law enforcement power. He is an enemy of the state, not the current state. He's an enemy of the real state, of we the people. Just my opinion. Because he's willing to not enforce the law against people he agrees with, but will enforce the law against people he does not agree with. How a guy like that became a federal judge in the first place should be a mystery to anyone, regardless of their party affiliation. That Merrick Garland was even considered to be a Supreme Court justice is breathtakingly oblivious to the reality. This guy is nothing more than a political hack. Nothing more than a political hack. It's awful. Absolutely awful. But let's stop worrying about Merrick Garland. Let's talk about the Department of Justice. How many more cases like this are we going to have to see before we realize that it's the Department of Injustice? It's not the DOJ. It's the DOI. How long will it be before we have to face the awful truth that our federal law enforcement is nothing more than the enforcement wing of the Democrat National Committee? That's something that we can't abide. And yes, if this was something that was being perpetrated on the people of the United States by the Republican Party, I'd be saying exactly the same thing. Because I don't give a damn whose political ox gets gored when truth gets in the way. The truth is that the Democrat Party is being run by a bunch of leftist progressives who are anti-American and are willing, in a grotesque display of oppression under color of office, twist American law to a political end. And we cannot allow it to continue to prevail. Now, who can we depend on at this particular moment to do something about it? Who can it depend on? Who can we depend on? Well, as this is a political mess, we can only depend on the politicians available who disagree, which would be ostensibly the Republican Party. I call on the Republican Party to do something about this immediately, to look at these indictments and call them what they are: unbalanced, biased, partisan, political indictments for political fact, as opposed to actual fact or actual law. This is a nation of laws. The DOJ is charged with executing that mission. This is not a nation of politics. The DOJ has no interest, at least should not have interest in politics. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. You can find us on the chat room on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. I had the occasion to make contact with the Fort Worth Police Department. Not in any criminal way. It had to do with my son Mitchell applying to the organization. That didn't work out, but while I was there, I got to see the Fort Worth Police Department up close and personal. And I am as impressed with that organization as I can possibly be. As a matter of fact, we could make a very good and successful petition that the Fort Worth Police Department take over all the jobs of the FBI, at least in Texas. They do a fantastic job. They also have kind of a sense of humor. This is a recruitment video that they just came up with, courtesy of Fox and Friends on Fox News.
We're hiring and we got it all. We got your patrol vehicles. We got your Explorers. We got your Tahoes. And we even got your F-150 responders. Say what? You may be asking yourself, but Big B, I want horsepower. You got horsepower? Well, of coursey, we've got horsey. Step right over here, folks. We've got our mounted unit right here. We have got our quarter horses. And even if you're lucky, maybe even a thoroughbred.
Oh, that's great. All right. So everybody has seen those used car salesmen, okay? Everybody has seen those used car salesmen that come out there and do that very same thing. This is such a very, very good job. And it tells you a little bit about the actual law enforcement agency. They take their job very seriously because it's a very serious job. But they also are people. And they also understand that there are a lot of problems with police recruiting these days because a lot of police departments are running roughshod over their officers. It's terrible, in fact. And what they're trying to do is they are trying to change policing. I was actually there. And I actually saw it for myself. And John Choice was a former member of the Fort Worth Police. He's retired. But he took me through the training wing of the Fort Worth Police Department personally. And I was introduced to several of the people who were actually going through the academy. And what they would do is, as they came into the hallway while we were talking, they'd stop and say, "How are you guys? How are you? How you doing? How's everything?" They'd interact with you. And that was part of their training. That's what Fort Worth police officers do. They write the book on community policing. It's not that they're these imperious authoritarians that are towering over you with weapons and tasers and pepper spray. I was going to say capsicum spray, but you were going to go capsicum. What are you talking about? Anyway, pepper spray. They don't imperiously tower over you. They say, "Hey, what's up? What's going on? What do we got here?" In other words, they actually care about the people they serve. They don't believe, at least as a whole, there may be individual officers that disagree, but they don't have people serving them. We, the people, don't serve them. They serve us, and they take that very seriously. I would like to, being a part of the Fort Worth Police Department is something that I've thought about ever since. I don't know what I would do. I'm mighty old. However, I am getting myself in shape. Here, look. Pretty impressive, huh? Let me see. That's pretty impressive, huh? Not bad, eh? It's the running thing that I'm really concerned about. And as I was talking about yesterday, I came back from my leg workout with an injured buttocks. Yeah, I told the story yesterday. If you want to know what it is, go back and find the October 5th edition of the Wells Report. It's right there at the beginning. You can't miss it. Anyway, it's not an implant, Arthur. I did not get a buttocks implant. Okay? I'm just saying. All right? So, anyway. No, I don't know whether I could do the running, but I thought about it. They don't seem to have a mandatory retirement age. I wonder what I could do with the Fort Worth Police Department. Maybe I could be their used car sales representative. No, probably not. And what I'm trying to say is this. I don't know where you're watching this, but pay attention to the Fort Worth Police Department. The way they do things is remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. And like I said, I'm a broadcaster through and through, and that's what I do for a living. But there are other ways of making a living. Hey, listen, before we go, I want to tell you something. You may have heard of a show called Imus in the Morning. It was Don Imus. He was a brilliant longtime radio personality. Well, one of the guys that made that show work was his producer, Bernard McGurk. Bernard succumbed to prostate cancer. He was a brilliant radio broadcaster. As a matter of fact, he's been called a legend. Longtime executive producer and personality for the late Don Imus and Imus in the Morning. He was most recently the co-host of WABC's Bernie and Sid in the Morning, alongside Sid Rosenberg. Red Apple Media Chad Lopez announced McGurk's passing this morning with a touching statement about the man who moved with Imus to WABC in 2007 and had been on the air in New York since 1986. Bernard McGurk, gone at age 64. This has been the Wells Report. We'll see you tomorrow. Take good care. Make good decisions. All right, then. And so there, I know you're kidding, Arthur. Come on, man. Does this look like the face of somebody who has no sense of humor at all? It does? Really? Anyway, great guy. Truly a legend. I did not used to have arms and legs like olive oil. I was always very, very well endowed with musculature. You were the guy that you're talking about yourself, man. You're projecting. You were a skinny little willowy guy. And that's all there is to it. All right, then. I got to get going because I have a drumming gig. Yeah. I've got my first professional drumming gig in 35 years. As a matter of fact, the last drumming gig I had hair down to the middle of my back. Yeah. Yvonne, I will reach out. I think I've got your telephone number. If you don't, I think you've got my telephone number. When I get all this stuff done in about 10 minutes, give me a buzz and I'll tell you where it is. Okay. And if you want to go, that's fine. Olivier. I love Gary Olivier. Man, he is my brother. There is no doubt about it. Okay. Yes, I do have your telephone number. I'll give you a buzz in about 10 minutes. Okay. Meantime, I got to go get my drums ready and packed up and all that kind of stuff. So you guys take good care of yourself. All right. You guys take good care of yourself. And like Susan says,